Right, now it's time to get your charting software set up if you haven't kind of done so already. TradingView is probably definitely the industry sort of leading software for charting at the moment. They've come on leaps and bounds in the last few years, and yeah, they definitely are up there, and they are insanely cheap for actually what they offer compared to what was available when I was first starting out my career. It was pretty poor, and some of the charting software was extremely expensive. So yeah, TradingView is amazing. I'm a massive fan. I would highly recommend that you pick up an account. So if you go over and start a free trial, open up an account, you can try it free for 30 days. But yeah, I would highly recommend that you invest in yourself, you take this seriously. This is your business after all, and take pride in the tools that you use. Now, once you've set up an account, whether you use that an account in your internet browser, or you can actually download the app. That's what I've got at the moment. The app tends to be pretty good. It was a little bit buggy when it first came out, but it's definitely a lot better. I find it, it's a lot quicker than using it in a browser for me personally. So but I'll leave that down to you. Now, your charts may look something like this when you first get them, kind of in that default setting when they pop those up to you. So what I'm going to do in this lesson, my kind of goal is just to talk you through the very basic features of it all, kind of just to help you familiarize yourself with it. But I'm not going to go across every single feature that we use and how we use it, as you will pick that up just kind of as you go along. It's very self-intuitive, the software, but as you go through the technical analysis lessons, you'll kind of pick up how I use it, and the main sort of tools that we will focus on, and how we use them. So if you do have a bit of experience with TradingView, I guess this is a time where I'll say you don't need to watch this video. You can kind of progress on to the following lessons. But for those who have never really used this before, this is kind of more catered towards you. So probably the first thing I would do is come up to the top right hand side here and click this little drop down menu here, and just make sure that you have auto save on, because essentially what that means is when you're doing all of your analysis and you're drawing on your charts, if you then you know where to click out of your chart or your window or your app, whatever you're using, and you haven't saved it, when you come back in, obviously none of your analysis is going to be there, and you're going to have to start all over again. So make sure that is on, and it only does it every 5 minutes. So let's say you draw some analysis and then you have to click out of the browser. Just make sure you click save before you do that. That option will be available to you if you have drawn some new analysis since it was last saved. And then what you can also do, so essentially the way this works is, it says unnamed at the moment, but this is kind of for the file, or I don't know how else you describe it, but essentially this is saving your whole charting setup, and you can have different ones. So rename the name, let's just say whatever you call it. I'm just going to put test for now for me, test default. And then we can save the name there, right? And then if you go into load chart layouts, this is where you would have all of your different layouts in here. So you can obviously do these for different reasons, for different pairs, or some for your backtesting, some for your live charts, etc., etc. That is how you can go in there and do it. And that's pretty much that. So yeah, this is obviously your actual chart. This is your price action. Make sure it's on the line chart. You do want to have candles. There are the types of charts we use, but obviously we focus on candles, or you may prefer hollow candles, whichever one you prefer there. These are your time frames up here. Okay, so obviously flick through weekly, daily, 4 hour. You can go into the drop down menu, and this is where you'll have all of the kind of preset time frames. Now if you click a star beside it, that's what will help populate it up here, whether you want kind of those charts that you regularly access. That's how you have that, and then you can create custom intervals down here where you can do if you want. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? You don't need me to hold your hand through all of these, but that's essentially that. And then up here is where you have you can search for symbols. Okay, so all symbols, you can filter it by stocks, futures, all of the different asset classes, right? So another way you can do is you can literally just type it when you're on the chart, so you don't actually have to go into there, and the symbol search will pop up straight away. So let's say we were looking for a pair like I don't know, euro pound. We would type that in, and then here you will have all of the same instrument, but with different data feeds, okay, just produced by different brokers. I personally use the forex.com ones. I just find those to be a pretty decent data feed. It's pretty accurate, in line with kind of my broker, so you can use whatever one there, but I wouldn't recommend that you use IDC. That's the only one I would say stay away from. As far as I'm aware, it's kind of a composite sort of index where they kind of take multiple data feeds and try and take the average of those, which you would think would be actually more accurate because you're getting, a wider feed, but it ends up being quite spiky and horrible. So yeah, I just find pick one of these three and generally you should be okay. But I personally prefer forex.com, and then that would obviously, populate that chart there. Now, if you come and click up here, this is where you have your watch list. If you open this up, this is where your kind of saved down tickers will be that you regularly access, and then that way you can click through them a lot quicker up here, okay? So if you want to add a new symbol, you can click the add sign and just go through that same process, right? And then you would click add beside that, and then that would populate that in there. So for instance, if you just wanted that euro pound, right, we would click add here, and then it would drop it down into here, and there you go. Now there's little flag systems here, so you can click that and you can have any sort of flagging system going if you want. It's kind of useful if you have something on watch or for whatever kind of system that you want to come up with. And you can play around with all these, but I'm not going to get into that in too much detail. Now, when you're potentially trading, right, and you might want to set alerts. So let's say you wanted an alert when this low was taken. What you would do is you come over here and then you would click add, and then you can click and add alert there, and then that's how essentially you can set alerts. I have it on the settings. If you click open, you can see the settings there. Essentially this will ping up. You can change the alert name here or the message. You could say euro pound, it's crossing this level, and you might want to say to yourself, like, if you need to do something, cancel an order or whatever, right, you can put a little message in there, because if you have the phone app downloaded to your phone, that will also populate as a notification on your phone, and tell you, remind you of why you had that alert set there. Now if you want to kind of manage your alerts, you can just go into this tab here and you can have all of your alerts. That shows you your active ones, the ones that have stopped out and been triggered, and the ones that have expired as well. And that's pretty much all I tend to use kind of on the right hand side here. And that is the main things that you want to be using there. Down here, just make sure you have the right time zone selected. So you may either, kind of two options I'd recommend, is either kind of use sort of the London time, or that is in line with your actual broker data feed on MT4. Most data feeds are to London time, which at the moment is UTC +1. Just keep an eye on that with daylight savings time, or you may want to set it to your actual own time zone. Yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of that. Then over here, this is kind of where you have all of your analytical tools. So yeah, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. We'll go through these once we get to the technical analysis lessons, and you'll see kind of what are the tools that we typically use. But what you want to do is, if you want to save one of these to your toolbar, so this is the toolbar up here, you can have this place wherever you want in your charts, and this is kind of just so you can get quick access to the tools that you use regularly. And if you want to add that to the toolbar, you just go into here, find a tool you want, and then click that to add or remove that from your favorite toolbar there. Now another thing I'd recommend that you have on is magnet mode, and essentially what that does is it allows you to snap drawings to the actual wicks or bodies of the candles, just so it draws really accurately. So for instance, let's say that you want to have a ray line and you want it to drawn exactly on the top of that wick. You see how I kind of come near it and it just snaps in like that? So then when I draw it, it's bang on accurate. That's because I've got magnet mode on there, so it's definitely something I would recommend you use. And that's kind of just the main things really I wanted to cover. It is very, very intuitive. Eventually, play around with the customized settings. If you go up into here as well, this is where the settings are, and you can play around with how it all looks and the colors of the candles. Last price line, I think that is that line there. I typically have that off. I try and keep my charts as minimal as possible, as you'll see as you go through the course. And you can just play around with this and kind of just get rid of, this is, you'll see as you play around the settings, right? It's really self-intuitive. I don't want to kind of drag this into a 40-minute video going through every single thing, but the way I kind of have my charts is very minimal and laid out. I prefer white charts now, just to keep things nice and clear, and you can kind of play around with that and to whether you prefer dark charts. If you want to kind of save your retinas, not burn your eyes, you may prefer this as well. One thing actually I would say is I would get away from the kind of green and red default candles. You might not think it's a big deal now, but green and red, it's what they use in casinos. It's there to invoke emotion, greed and fear. It's very, very subtle, but definitely something I would recommend you change up and just do some more neutral colors, in my opinion. Just have to play around the settings. There are ways in which you can trade through brokers through TradingView, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend you do that. I will talk about this more in the next lessons on choosing brokers, but I would definitely recommend that you keep your charting software separate from the execution, separate from the platform that you actually execute your trades on, okay? just because it can get very, very messy when you're trying to do your analysis and you've got your live trades on here. You don't want to kind of accidentally be modifying or executing positions when you didn't mean to. And also, it's kind of best to keep it separate, just so you don't have kind of your floating P&L there right in your face all the time, as it can just lead to you increasing the chances of you kind of potentially making an emotional, premature error, making a decision that is not in line with your trading plan. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to use bar replay as well, this is kind of when you can use for testing, but again, we'll get into this in a later date. But that's essentially a very useful tool where you can bring price back to a historical point in time, and then you can play price forward and essentially simulate a live market environment. I guess the only other thing I'd probably talk about at this stage as well is having a multi-chart layout. So, by the way, if you click that will save there as well. And if you want to take screenshots, you can either press this, right, to take a snapshot, or you can press Command. Yeah, sorry, it is Alt S, yeah, and that will do. It will tell you down here that you have copied that link to your clipboard. So then what you can do is if you open up, let's just do it now, Safari, and then you copy and paste that into your web browser in the top URL. And then that essentially will open up a screenshot of your trade. So this is really useful when you are doing your testing and your journaling, okay? So yeah, the only last thing I wanted to talk about was your multi-chart layout. So if you come up here, at the moment we're only looking at one chart, right? But you can have multiple chart layouts here. Now the amount of layouts that you can have will depend on your subscription tier, but I think the basic payment one does give you up to 4, I believe. I'll have to double check that. Now what you want to make sure that you have selected here is you want to have symbol on, your crosshair on, and your drawings on. So what that means is when you are flicking through your ticker list here, it will populate that one symbol, so say euro yen, on all 4 of your timeframes. So if you don't have that symbol checked, then that means you could have, you may want to have it where you have actually a view of all of your different currency pairs right here, and then you can have different ones like that. But the way I personally have it set up is it's the same symbol. So then if I go on euro dollar, what I would then do is I would have, say, the 4-hour, or let's say the daily time frame up here. I would have the 4-hour down here, and then maybe the 15-minute here, and then maybe the 1 minute here, okay? So that at a glance, I can now see all of my different time frames on one pair, right? Get rid of all this rubbish, volume, kind of click on it and delete like that. Or if you come up to here, any indicators you have, this is where you can play around with the settings. You can hide them like that, or you can just get rid of it, okay? But we'll talk about this at a later date. So yeah, that's the time frames. That's how I would use that. It's really, really useful to kind of have that laid out, and that's pretty much it. One thing that is really useful, especially as you kind of get more advanced with TradingView, is if you go up into the top here and then you go down to keyboard shortcuts, this will show you all the shortcuts you can use, and I would definitely recommend learning some of these for the the functions that you're performing constantly, as it will save you a lot of time and you can get kind of very, very quick with your analysis. So I'll leave that there. Obviously, as we go through the technical analysis lessons and the rest of the course, you will see which tools that we kind of use frequently, and you'll get you'll pick it up as you go along. But as always, if you do have any specific questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below or hit us up in the community.